Good afternoon, everybody, and thanks for tuning in. John Kelly, profile here, and welcome. Welcome to Port 38 for a very, very sad series. Who killed Libby German and Abby Williams up in Delphi, Indiana? This one's really been going on. It's over 4 years. We're going on 5 years now, and it's pretty upsetting. It'll be 5 years in February 22. Okay. So anyway, we want to catch this guy, and supposedly there's a possible new person of interest, and we're talking about Kegan Anthony Kline. Kegan Anthony Kline, aka Anthony Shots. Okay, I mean, this guy catfished a lot of girls, and I'm going to get into exactly what he was doing in a second. First of all, I want to say that everybody's innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. And also, I want to bring up my book. Everybody's been asking, and thank you so much for those of you that have purchased the book. Everybody's been asking me for years, John, how did you become a profiler? What made you a profiler? Why did you become a psychotherapist and then a profiler? Where did you come from? It's all here. It's condensed. The Good, the Bad, the Ugly of John Kelly in Discovering Lazarus. 280 some pages, really condensed. And I'm sorry, 188 pages, right? We're under 200 pages in this book. I'm sorry, my mistake. Really condensed story of how John Kelly became a profiler. Again, the good, the bad, and the ugly of John Kelly. Thank you. Getting on to this now, with this Kegan Anthony, Kline, Kegan Anthony Kline, alias Anthony Shots. This guy portrays himself as a model on the internet and, really catfished a lot of young girls. It's amazing to me how he got all these young girls. I think there's a count of 15, but I'm not hanging my hat on that. I think there's approximately 100 pictures, maybe over 100 pictures. How this guy got these girls to send him these photos. I have to believe that not only was he coming across as this model with, a lot of money, that he was a celebrity, that he had all these hot cars. He's this really built, good-looking young man. So he's coming across as this Anthony Shots, who he's made up. Okay, I mean the model is real, but he has made up, this fake profile that he's been putting out there. Now, I looked at that and I thought to myself, this guy really has a lot of time on his hands and is really obsessed with young girls. He has to be obsessed with young girls to go to all this work, to put this together, to come up with this completely fictitious person, okay, Anthony Shots, and then to start to try to market these girls and get these girls to send over pictures of themselves in the nude, okay, which he admitted to looking at and masturbating to, okay. He even had some of the girls masturbating. So in the pictures that they sent over to him. So this guy really, really, really is an extremely visually manipulating kind of guy, because all this is being done over the internet. All this catfishing and manipulation and taking advantage of these poor young girls. He's probably telling them, oh boy, you look really nice. I could tell just by looking at a picture of you, probably with clothes on, saying, you know what, maybe you could be a model. Could I get a better look at your body? Maybe you could be a model. You have potential, and unfortunately, it looks like We've had a lot of young girls fall for this, and the pictures ended up in this guy's hands, and we don't know whose else's hands they ended up in because I'm not sure what the hell this guy did for a living. Okay, I'm not sure what he did for a living. How did this guy make money? Okay, was this guy selling these pictures that he was getting too to make some money? All right, because there's a lot of people into child porno, into teen porno, okay? And there's a major market for it. So I think there's a lot more to be revealed, with Kegan Anthony Kline, aka Anthony Shots. So I think more will be revealed. We just have to stay tuned. This guy's 27 years old now. He would have been 23 when Abby and Libby were killed. Usually serial killers start between 23 and 35. That's usually when they start. So he would have been 23 at that time. So I've got a lot I'm thinking about here. I've got a lot I'm thinking about because what I do not see so far is a history of violence. Right now, I'm going to be interviewed and I'm going to be asked some questions, kind of going over all of this case, different things we've come up with in our profiling of this case. And so you understand, profiles are always moving forward. When information appears. We haven't been talking about this case in a while because we've had nothing to report. We don't want to talk just to talk. We want to make sure if we're talking on this case and you guys are good enough to watch one of our shows, that we have something to give you. That we have something that might move the case forward, or we can kind of break down and pick apart a possible person of interest. Okay, thank you. So now on with the questions.
Okay, so John, your partner Frank Adamson believes that the girls were catfished or stalked. You were kind of up in the air with this. What do you say now?
Frank really believes the girls were catfished. He really believes they were stalked. I was up in the air and still up in the air about it because, I think that a person, and especially a person like this Kegan Kline, would know from being on the internet and catfishing and just getting around to girls in those days, that the school had those extra snow days and people were going to be off. And if he was getting any information at all, he would know that some girls were going to the trails that day, right? There was going to be some girls out there on the trails. So where I have a problem is I don't necessarily think he had to catfish Libby and Abby, although, it's extremely plausible, as much as he just had to be in the know that on that particular day, there were going to be women out there on those trails where there are no cameras, okay? And they could have been possible victims. Now, you have to understand, I cannot say that Mr. Kline hurt, killed, or harmed in any way, shape, or form Libby or Abby. I mean, he's just somebody that just popped up here on the radar who is obviously, really a sexual deviant that's taking advantage of a lot of young girls and has a lot of victims out there.
Can you explain how Kegan Kline fits the profile you guys did?
Well, Kegan Kline so far fits Based on the information we have, which is limited, first of all, that he's extremely visually oriented. Okay. I mean, there's no doubt in my mind that Kegan Kline is extremely visually oriented, which we believe the killer of Abby and Libby was. Okay. We're looking at, this visual manipulation online. Okay, and it's all visual. It's all this Anthony shots, the good-looking body on him, the money he has, the cars he has. This is who he's pretending to be. This is all visual stuff, okay? When he's corresponding with his victims, that's pretty much all visual, okay? He's really manipulating them in an extremely visual way. That fits. The other part of it is organized. I really believe he's very organized. He'd have to be organized to pull this off, to get away with it as much as he did. And you can see his organizational planning in, this whole, Anthony shots scam. Okay, I mean, it is very, very well organized. He has various devices. Some planning went into this. And, I think that fits, part of our profile. There's other parts of the profile I don't see him fitting. We called the fellow that killed these girls, the killer, a hunter. Okay, I don't see yet or hear of this guy being a hunter. Go ahead, you can continue.
Yes, you kind of addressed some of my questions. Do you believe this is where the pictures come in your profile, with him being organized and extremely visually oriented?
Yeah, the pictures really pretty much tell you he's extremely visually oriented. I mean, there's no question about it. I mean, not only does he want the pictures of the girls, but then the pictures of, the model that he put out there, the scam that he ran online. That's all visually oriented manipulation.
Okay. So what do you think about exactly how he manipulated girls online? And do you think he was obsessed with these girls' pictures?
I think he's extremely obsessed with young girls. As we know, these pedophiles and various violent sexual criminals they have these obsessions that are driven by a fantasy, become a fantasy of theirs, and it drives them, and they want to have more and more control over their victims. And, this is where, the pictures start to come in, and the manipulation online and everything, and to be able to control these girls, to get them to send over the most intimate pictures and details of themselves. And I think, he probably, again, was using a ruse, I can help you become famous. I can help you become a model. I'd like to. You really have it. You look really great, which would cause some girls to send even more pictures because they're getting such positive feedback from who they think is this very successful, rich, famous model. Right? So they'd continue with it.
Right. So trying to take a better look at who Kegan really was, do you think he was really an armed security guard at a National Park Service?
See, that's something that jumped out at me. I mean, I know he has that posted that he was an armed guard at a National Park Service. The reason that jumps out at me is if he was armed, that means he owns a gun, probably a pistol. Okay, guaranteed a pistol. Okay, if he was an armed security guard at National Forest Association or whatever it is. But also, if working for the National Park Service, Forest Service, he'd have a pretty good feeling for the outdoors. He'd be familiar with trails, things like that. So I don't know if that's true or it's false. I think it might be BS, but really, says a lot to me if a guy's familiar with the outdoors, familiar with the trails, and has a gun. Because we believe Bridge Guy was absolutely familiar with the area, familiar with the trails, and we absolutely believe Bridge Guy had a gun to take control in the beginning and abduct Abby and Libby.
Can you explain more about what you think of him being a card dealer in Las Vegas?
Yeah, then the other part of it, being a card dealer in Vegas, to be a dealer in Vegas, you definitely have to have a good visual primary intake sense because it's all visual, and you really have to be organized. You really have to have those organizational skills because you're managing a table, you're managing money, you're managing 5, 6, 7, 8 people at the same time. You really have to be organized in what you're doing, know what you're doing, have a real strict structure, and again, be very, very visual. So if he in fact had done this, that just, kind of enhances, the type of person we feel would be involved in this. Now, keep in mind too that gambling really stimulates the same neurotransmitters as sex. So, whether you're a sexual addict or, you're a gambleaholic, you're stimulating, very similar, the same neurotransmitters in the pleasure center. I mean, there's no question about it. So, it's all interesting to me. Again, we have to get more information here.
So what about his history? Do you think what do you think about his priors?
Well, see, this is it. I don't see any violent priors. I'm hoping if there's a history of violence that somebody's going to talk about it, somebody's going to bring it out, because whoever killed Abby and Libby was an extremely violent and deliberate murderer. Okay? I mean, it's one thing, catfishing girls to get pictures of them naked. Okay? But it's 0 to 60 to go from that to being a deliberate killer of 2 young girls, out off the trails. And, I have to say that the word deliberate, I can't be stronger with, because I believe the man that set out that day to go there to those trails to look for victims or to focus on Abby and Libby knew that he was going to murder whoever he came across and whoever got into his control zone. Okay? I mean, he had made up his mind, I believe, before he left his house that day, that he was deliberately going to kill whoever was his victim or victims that day. So when we look at this Kegan Anthony Kline, that's what we have to think about. Can this guy go from taking pictures, manipulating and catfishing young girls, and masturbating to their pictures, to killing 2 young girls out off the trails in Delphi? Because that's the jump. That would have to be the jump. Unless there is a history of violence with Kegan Kline that we don't know about. And I'm hoping more will be revealed if there is any kind of history.
So going off of that, do you think Kegan Kline right now is capable of murdering 2 young girls?
At this point in time, without a history of violence, I do not I can't say that Kegan Kline is a murderer. I can say he's a sexual deviant, but I can't say he's a murderer. I can't say he's a killer. There's no question about it. We don't have enough proof. There's not enough evidence. And, he may be guilty. He may be guilty of, and it looks that way because he's admitted to it and they've arrested him. So he's guilty of taking advantage of young girls. And that's interesting too, to me, because I'm not seeing a whole lot of sexual contact in the charges. I'm not seeing them talking about, unless I'm missing it, and please correct me if I am, where he's being charged with raping anybody. He's being charged with molesting anybody. I don't see him being charged with any kind of aggressive sexual movements whatsoever. I see him being charged with catfishing, conning girls, and getting their pictures, and masturbating. But that also brings up something else too. If we remember the information we heard, and we don't know if it's true or not, from Leaker, supposedly the girls were not touched sexually. Abby and Libby supposedly were not touched sexually. They were not raped. Okay? So we were kind of looking at, if that was true, somebody that would be more of a looker, a watcher, and that's where we came up with them having a very strong visual intake. It's actually way before that, but it just, plays into our profile on that. But that's the other thing that kind of draws me back towards thinking more about, Mr. Kline here, because it seems he's not an up-close, physical, personal kind of guy. Like I said, we have no rapes. We have he's not being charged with any, from what I can see, or any kind of sexual, physical activity towards any of these girls. I haven't seen any charges yet on that. So he's a looker, okay, and he gets off and pleasures himself, okay, by looking. And after hearing Leaker, there's this feeling that maybe this guy got off sexually without touching Abby or Libby, got off sexually on his own based on the deed he did to them, murdering them and possibly posing them in some way. Very interesting. This is interesting. We're looking. We can't say this guy's a killer, but definitely, is a sexual deviant. Is he a violent sexual deviant? We don't have that information yet.
All right. Final question here. Just to sum up real quick, what would you still want to know about him to get a better idea if he is the killer?
Well, something also, too, that he put on his resume, I'd like to know about this security guard stuff. I mean, even if he wasn't a security guard, if he put that on his bio that he was a security guard, is he fantasizing about becoming a security guard? And the reason I bring this up is because a number of serial killers were security guards. Sexual serial killers, were security guards, and they couldn't be cops or whatever, so they went to the next best thing because it gave them an identity of power and control. Now, don't forget, Carter mentioned early on in the beginning two things that are very important. Carter brought out that we may have come across you early in the investigation and questioned you. Well, they did come across Kegan Kline early in the investigation and did question him. Okay, so this kind of goes back to what Carter talked about early on, in the investigation, that they would have come across somebody. Possibly the person they're looking for is somebody they could have came across early on in the investigation. So this fits that part of it. But also getting back to the security guard thing. I mean, if you are fantasizing about becoming a security guard, if you were a security guard, I mean, that tells me you're interested in, especially if you were fantasizing about it, some power, control, having power and control over others. And as Carter mentioned in the beginning, he believed that the killer was very much interested in power, in having power, okay, and having control over others. So I'd be interested in knowing more about this guy's background. I'd be interested in what was his childhood like. I'd be interested if he abused animals. I'd be interested if he was a hunter. I'd be interested if he had any ties to Delphi. I really believe we have to be able to put the killer, in Delphi. We got to put him there somehow, some way, some shape, right? Some form. He's got to be somehow familiar with the Delphi area. Again, that history of violence would be something that I'd be very much interested in knowing.
Thank you, John.
And thank you so much to all of you for all your subscriptions. Please continue to subscribe. Please continue to comment. We love your comments. Sorry if I was a little drawn out on this, but my mind just starts analyzing every piece that I can think about. And again, just to go back and say, you got to stay safe out there. Keep your eyes, stay on your toes, especially any of you that live up around Delphi or this area, because this killer is still on the loose. We don't know who he is yet. I mean, I believe the cops have him in a net, but they're not sure which one he is. Hopefully, today will be the day, and we'll get this guy off the streets. Again, thank you so much. God bless. Have a great day.